All right, good morning. This is Jeff at the National Weather Service office here on Wednesday as the winter storm is now really just starting to kind of unfold, kind of starting to get the first wave of snow across central Virginia, and more snow is coming up from the south. And so the risk areas really haven't changed much. If anything, they've been fine-tuned where the areas in orange here, we're still expecting some pretty moderate, significant impacts to travel. And then the areas in red here, especially maybe parts of the Eastern Shore, the peninsula, all of Hampton Roads, and even down into Northeast North Carolina. It looks like that's going to be our best chance for where we're going to see the major impacts from the heavy snowfall. Just looking at the weather map side of things, we did this yesterday, so I'll kind of step through this real quick. We are where we should be. You had the system coming across the U.S. here, and now it's starting to link up with a low pressure system that's developing here off of Charleston. And this nor'easter is going to continue to lift northeast really slow and continue to intensify. It's going to continue to pump moisture up into southeast Virginia and eastern Carolina, as well as central Virginia, as all this kind of comes together. So this is the weather map for this evening around 7 p.m. And everything really should be going pretty hot and heavy by, I'd say, late afternoon and this evening, especially, I'd say, from maybe Richmond, especially southeast of Richmond, down south towards Emporia, and then east all the way to the coast. So that's this evening. The two are linking up. Low pressure system kind of starts to pass maybe southeast of Cape Hatteras, let's say by about 1 a.m. or so, or early morning hours passing southeast. Still, heavy snow will be shifting to the coast, I think, as we get into the later hours overnight tonight and during the early morning hours. Things are really going to start to shift and focus to the coast as this nor'easter continues to intensify and try to pull away from the coast. By tomorrow morning, you do see the coastal low is actually starting to move away. But then all of a sudden, like we said yesterday, you're seeing the snow once again trying to expand across a lot of Virginia, coming across the mountains. Snow returns in areas where maybe it had tapered off and maybe ended. Snow may taper off across central Virginia later tonight and during the early morning hours. And by the time we get into tomorrow morning, the snow may return again as that upper level, really strong upper level low pressure system swings through. So this is tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And then here we are tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. The whole thing should be gone, and this event should be over. So weather-wise, weather pattern-wise, things are coming together really well. Still have winter storm warnings in effect for the entire region, except for these areas up here in the purple where we have winter weather advisories in effect for maybe a little bit lesser snow totals. And so we'll get right into the snow totals. This is the forecast as of right now. We have kind of fine-tuned it a little bit. I'd say we maybe have reduced totals maybe a little bit here in the west towards Farmville and maybe down towards Carr Lake, and even up in Louisa, still kind of holding around 2 to 3 inches. Across central Virginia, we're still going about 4 to 6 inches. That's still a struggle, trying to figure out when the snow is going to actually end this first wave later tonight, and then how much snow we're going to get when it returns tomorrow morning with that second wave and the upper low. So still pretty tricky here in Richmond. I think we got pretty good confidence that this is pretty well dialed in. I think 6 inches is a stretch. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that much, but we might be able to make a run at, let's say, 3 to 5 inches there, and I'll kind of break that down here a little bit more in a minute. Same thing here across the northern parts of the Maryland Eastern Shore, a good gradient of snow, and that still looks like it's some pretty good confidence there, where just maybe a couple inches there in Cambridge, and by the time you start to push down towards Snow Hill, snow totals may be getting upwards of 4 or 5 inches or so down there, 3 to 5 inches there in Snow Hill. And then as you move on further down the Eastern Shore, the totals start to increase dramatically. 6 to 8 inches starting to kind of narrow in here, the area in yellow, areas that we think we're going to see that 6 to 8. And the orange areas, I'd say, is kind of more 8 to 10. I think 12 inches would be the very high end of the mark. I think that's kind of the upper range there. But 8 to 10 in the areas here in orange, it is very possible. I think that's what we're really expecting, is that 8 to 10 inches. So really, Northampton County, Virginia, down through a good bit of the peninsula, maybe coming down through Smithfield, almost to Franklin, and then kind of swinging on down here into North Carolina through Gates County, and then eventually coming down here near the Albemarle Sound to include Elizabeth City. Now Elizabeth City may be closer to 8 inches because they may get a little bit of sleet mixed in there, but still some pretty good snow totals for our friends down there in Northeast North Carolina. Looking at some of the latest trends, and I'll just show some of the latest model blends that come in. We get these are just coming in now. So now we kind of have the latest trends. This may be a little bit low on the Richmond side. It's really tried to curtail some of the snow in Richmond, only showing maybe about 2 to 3 inches up there with this entire event, but continuing to really kind of bullseye down here, southeast Virginia and in the northeast North Carolina. I think if you bump it up into a little bit more of a worst case or a little bit more increased case, I think this probably looks more realistic right now. Kind of showing this area in yellow where you're going to get that 6 to 8 inches, maybe getting as far west as Emporia or just east of Emporia, and then definitely down here to Elizabeth City with that 6 to 8, maybe even 8 to 10, and still continuing to bullseye the Hampton Roads area with the best chance for snow. Moving it up into like a worst case scenario, especially for the north side, it is showing, on the high end, Richmond might be able to get, which is 3 to 5 inches in Richmond. The totals up there have really been kind of tricky to dial in. We've kind of kept it focused, anywhere from 3 to 5 and 4 to 6. I know there was a lot of folks talking about models showing, a lot of snow in Richmond. We never latched onto those. They seemed kind of unrealistic given the pattern and what was going on, and they were statistically outliers. When we look at our snow probabilities and we run these snow forecasts, we are doing statistical analyses on literally over 100 different model projections. So there is a lot that goes into this, and they're very well worked through when we start talking about our snow totals. So we're not picking the NAM versus the GFS versus the Euro. That's not the way it works when we do snow forecasting. It's a statistical distribution and analysis, and we look at conceptually what can this pattern produce. So I think we're dialing it in pretty well. That's how we kind of have come up with these totals, and we've kind of stuck with these totals. Jumping right into the probabilities, as far as getting 4 inches of snow in Richmond, there's still a probability there. So that's why we're saying 3 to 5, almost a 60% probability of 4 inches in Richmond. Back in Louisa and up towards Cambridge, that probability of 4 inches is really almost non-existent, pretty low. Getting down to South Hill, Carr Lake, probably definitely going to get 4 inches, maybe a little bit more. Same thing up here towards Salisbury and getting over to Ocean City. Probably going to make a run at 3 to 4 inches up there. And that's why we're forecasting that amount there. Getting into the 6 inches of snow, especially the areas here in orange, that's the areas where we think we're going to make a run at 6 inches, maybe a little bit more. Obviously, the areas in red is a slam dunk for 6 inches. Getting into the 8-inch snow probabilities, areas in orange is where we're expecting 8 inches of snow. Again, still a 66% probability of 8 inches of snow in Norfolk. So that's really high. Even at this stage of the game, you're talking about 2/3 of the models have 8 inches of snow or more in Norfolk. So that's a really strong signal there, even back up towards Smithfield and almost to Williamsburg, not quite, probably getting up on the north end of Newport News and York, where we kind of have those higher probabilities. And even down in Elizabeth City, again, some pretty good probabilities right in the sweet spot. 50% is kind of the sweet spot in your statistical distribution. So Elizabeth City, still looks like they're going to make a run at 8 inches. Looking at the probabilities of a foot, it has shrunk a little bit. It's still obviously very focused on the lower end of Eastern Shore, Hampton Roads, and a little bit here into Northeast North Carolina. So if we're going to see a foot of snow, this is still probably the area that has the best probability. About maybe a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chance of getting a foot of snow, especially in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, about a 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 chance. So telling you about a fourth of the models or about a fifth of the models are saying you might be able to make a run at a foot of snow before all is said and done. Ice is really obviously not an issue. The only thing we're noting here is that we may get into a little bit of a mix with snow and sleet. I don't know if we're really going to get into true freezing rain, maybe more like freezing drizzle there at the end, but maybe just a little bit of a wintry mix here right along the Albemarle Sound, but not really expecting much of an issue from that still. Obviously, the onset timing, it's already started. We've got the event just about ongoing everywhere. And then the ending times have not changed much. Still looking like that second burst is going to come through and Central Virginia and hopefully be over by about 10 to noon. It's probably going to come through either side of daybreak, maybe a little bit after daybreak. And then in the east, it's going to take a little bit longer to get that upper level system through. And so we could still see those bursts of snow into the early part of the afternoon. So what I can do is I'm going to back up here and just kind of show you where we are right now, because obviously it's ongoing. So that's actually the mosaic radar from across the region. And the numbers that you're seeing are visibility. So where you see some of these low numbers, 1.5 inches around Richmond, over here towards the airport, about it's going to be 1.5 miles here near Petersburg, 1.5 miles near the airport there in Richmond. These are visibility. So where you're seeing these lower numbers, that's a pretty good little burst of snow. You got some snow coming down pretty good. The visibilities have not started to drop yet here in the east or across Hampton Roads, but it is filling in. And you do see these low visibilities extend pretty far back to the west. And so all this is continuing to move east. So the snow is going to continue to fill in. So looking at the timing of this going forward, we'll pull over our model depiction here of the simulated radar. It's doing a pretty good job right now. This is the current time, and the simulation is doing a pretty good job showing the snow lifting north across Elizabeth City. It's been going from west to east here across central Virginia. Got some of those snow rates where you are reducing visibility. So it's doing a pretty good job picking up on what's going on right now. Moving this forward, you do see the snow really does start to expand in the next hour, hour and a half north, covering a lot of Hampton Roads. So it does start to fill in, continuing to have some snow falling across Richmond as the snow is streaming from west to east across central Virginia. Here's 1 o'clock. You're starting to see maybe some higher rates starting to move up from the south, and those higher rates continue to spread north by about 2, 3 o'clock. I think you're going to start to see some pretty good snow rates starting to spread up across Hampton Roads, maybe even up to the peninsula and the eastern shore, especially by about 3 o'clock. Still snow in Richmond, so the snow that you have now, you'll continue to see. It'll pick up at times. It'll let up a little bit. It'll pick back up again through the day, but Richmond's still continuing to see that snow up until about 3 o'clock or so. Here's 4 o'clock this evening. Things are really going to start cranking late this afternoon and evening across southeast Virginia and the Tidewater region. Probably going to continue to spread up the peninsula and the middle peninsula as we get through the afternoon hours here. The heavier rates might extend a little bit further inland than this. It might extend a little bit further, back towards Petersburg, and maybe a little bit further up north, going up through Williamsburg, heading up here through Gloucester and Matthews, and maybe even up here towards Accomack. Some of these higher rates maybe, starting to kind of spread north a little more than that. As we move ahead in time, 6 o'clock this evening, as we get into about 8, 10 o'clock, still snowing pretty good in the east. It does look like it might try to taper off a little bit in the west. We'll see how much it really tapers off across Richmond. Looks like it is trying to taper off a little bit this evening. It could be a little bit optimistic. Still snowing by 10 o'clock. Here's midnight. Still snowing here southeast Virginia. The coastal low is starting to try to pull out, so we might see the snow starting to decrease a little bit here through the early morning hours. It looks like the event is over. But like we've been talking about, you see the next round of snow coming here from the west, and then the upper low starts to pivot through here. This is 5 a.m. It slowed it down a little bit, but you see the snow filling back in tomorrow morning, and then it starts to kind of come through here. You may see some pockets there of a snow shower or snow burst. This is about 11 a.m., still showing some snow moving across the area, and eventually it all does start to pull out, I'd say by about 1 or 2 o'clock. Things are starting to kind of end and taper off. When this thing comes through tomorrow morning, it's a very strong upper level low, and so there's going to be bursts of snow, and so it's going to be like pockets. It's going to be a lot of light snow, and then you're going to have pockets of really heavy snow burst, and folks can pick up a quick inch out of those bursts. If you have a snow burst that lasts, let's say 30 to 45 minutes, like a heavy rain shower. Think of it like that. You could pick up an inch of snow pretty quickly. So we're going to have to watch out for this Thursday morning. Obviously, it's going to be cold, and that upper level system is going to put a really big squeeze plate on the atmosphere. So that's why we kind of have it maybe going up until about noon or so in the I-95 corridor, and maybe lasting till about 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon here in the east. But just realize there may be a break in between these two systems, and we'll see how much of a break we get. Some models think that it could be like what you just saw, a several hour break, where other models say that the two are almost going to run together. There may not be that much of a break. So we'll see how that plays out. Looking at the snowfall rates, I'm doing a pretty good job this morning showing that the fact that there's some heavier snowfall rates that have been moving across central Virginia, and that's where we've seen some accumulations there across parts of Richmond. In fact, if I just pull the VDOT cameras up, talking about those higher rates, you can definitely see, some of the snow accumulations here. This is out towards Short Pump. So, definitely seeing some snow accumulations out there now. You can see the visibility's kind of been restricted there. So we definitely are seeing some of the better rates. Here we are more towards 95, a little bit further to the east than the previous camera. And you can see the snow coming down and look off in the distance. You can definitely tell the rates are pretty decent up there. Some good light to moderate snow, and it's picking up on that pretty well, showing this band here. But then notice how much the rates increase as we push through this afternoon, really across Richmond and then going down 95 to the east. Those snowfall rates are really going to pick up, and we've kind of circled the area here where the snowfall rates could really peak out to about 2 inches per hour, especially after that 3 to 4 o'clock time frame. So remember, we showed you guys that heavier snow starting to develop over southeast Virginia. This is where we really might start to see that really heavy snow, especially after about 3 to 4 o'clock. Going into later tonight, taking us from about 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. Again, those rates, continuing really kind of widespread across the area here, maybe up to about 1 inch an hour. And where we've circled here, that's where we may continue to see occasional 2 inch an hour snowfall rates there across southeast Virginia. For tomorrow morning, those rates will start to decrease and things will start to actually pull out. But what is kind of neat to see here is you see these little pocket circles here. Do not take a grain of salt with the locations of where the actual brighter blue is being bullseyed here. The reality of it is, it's kind of showing you that there's going to be bursts of snow embedded here. And so it's going to be like little pockets of showers, pockets of heavy snow that are going to move across central Virginia and eventually eastern Virginia. So for the most part, I think it's mostly going to be light snow tomorrow morning, and then all of a sudden, boom! So a few folks may get burst and pick up a quick inch over the course of that morning time, up until about, let's say, 10 a.m. to about 2 p.m. tomorrow. We've already talked a lot about the snow character being so cold. It's a dry snow right now this morning up there in Richmond. Going to continue to be dry. Even most of Hampton Roads is probably going to be the drier variety. It may get a little bit sticky later this afternoon, especially tonight here on the left. You start to see conditions warm a little bit. So it might be more of I call it a normal snow or a little bit more of a sticky snow. It's going to start out dry in Hampton Roads and maybe get a little stickier. And in fact, this forecast here is showing a little bit more of the pink getting up towards Hampton Roads than we saw yesterday. So the snow may get a little bit wetter tonight. That's what that's suggesting there. Where in Richmond, any snow that's falling should still be pretty dry, as well as I say most of the eastern shore. So we'll watch out here to see if the snow gets a little more stickier tonight, but it still should be all snow. And then anything that falls tomorrow morning is definitely going to be that drier snow variety. It's not going to be sticky snow. It'll just be a burst of snow, and it'll be really, really dry, powdery snow when it actually bursts down tomorrow morning with that upper level low pressure system. Kind of hit the timing of the snow here pretty good. So we put that in our briefings. As far as winds, not much change here either. So you just have the timing of snow here on the left, timing of your winds over land here on the right. So the winds are still expected to pick up this afternoon. Here in Norfolk, where we're going to have the heaviest snow when the snow's falling, northeast winds, probably 15 miles an hour, gust up to 20, maybe even 25 miles per hour later tonight. And the snow will obviously taper off tomorrow by 12 to 2 o'clock. But the winds keep blowing here for a while. So again, blowing snow still going to be a concern for Thursday night and into Friday morning, especially areas that have had pick up quite a bit of snow. Blowing snow could definitely be a problem, moving things around, making it hard to keep things clear. Basically later as you get through Thursday night and into Friday morning. Temperature-wise, these are the highs for today. It's cold out there now. We're not going to push up much beyond where we are right now, to be honest with you. So pretty much below freezing everywhere. Tomorrow morning, really going to be cold as that upper system's coming across with temperatures, in the teens to around 20 inland and probably mid-20s here at the coast. So very, very cold tomorrow morning. Thursday's highs are probably going to just top out right around 30 to 31 degrees. We're not going to get above freezing. Again, we might see a little bit of sun try to peek out very late in the day, but we're not going to see much sunshine at all. But you might see the clouds trying to break up there very late in the day. I'd say after about maybe 2 to 4 o'clock, the clouds may start to try to break up, but it's not going to give us any help with any kind of melting as far as that goes. Just looking at the wind chill forecast, because of the winds, it's going to be really, really cold with those winds picking up. So we got the different locations. You can check your location out, but you definitely see all day tomorrow, those wind chills stay pretty much in the teens. Friday morning with the clear skies, really cold temperatures and continued windy conditions, that's going to be the coldest morning. So wind chills down in the single digits for a lot of us come Friday morning. And then you do notice the winds do start to try to decrease a little bit here by the time we get into 6 a.m. Saturday morning. So the wind chills still in the teens and 20s, but not as bad as what they were. But the really cold morning should be Friday morning. But you see some really pretty cold wind chills here throughout the entire event, just given the temperatures and the wind. Looking at our temperatures, just kind of highlighting that Friday is still pretty cold. Temperatures are pretty much still in the mid to upper 30s. We will see a good bit of sunshine, so that can maybe start to help to work on surfaces that get plowed. If we get some asphalt exposed, get that sunshine, it will help the road conditions a little bit. Roads that stay covered with snow, that's going to be tough because snow is self-insulating. And so, areas where we have snow-covered roads, and if they're not cleared on Friday, they're not going to melt very much because snow insulates itself. It's reflective and it reflects a lot of the sun's radiation. So I think we will see improvements on Friday, but again, the secondaries could be kind of tough because it is still pretty cold. By the time we get into Saturday morning, still looking at temperatures in the teens and 20s for the most part. So very, very cold. Saturday, we might start to get into the upper 30s to low 40s. Again, continued sunny with maybe a few clouds around, but then you do notice a good warm up here as we get into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We finally start to get a little bit of a break here, and this cold weather starts to leave us, and we get a good break here. So that's good news. It just might honestly take us to Sunday to really get to a point where things are really starting to kind of melt for us, in the most part. Shifting gears into the marine, not much change here either. We do have gale warnings in effect for the Chesapeake Bay, the coastal waters. We have small craft advisories there at the James River, York, and Rappahannock. So the gales are just in effect for the bay and the coastal waters. Here's your probability of gale conditions here on the right. So kind of running down the east side of the bay here with the best probability of gales running out the mouth of the bay. And then, of course, areas in red here offshore is a slam dunk. Even areas in orange, we do expect gale conditions in those areas in orange. So gives you an idea of the winds that are going to be increasing here later on Thursday. Looking at it day by day, the area in red here represents our gale conditions. So, Thursday, the gale conditions will set up across the bay and the coastal waters, persist a little bit into Friday, and then winds will be continuing to decrease later in the day on Friday. And eventually, by the time we get into Saturday, winds have really started to decrease. And then by Sunday, I think winds are a lot lighter. So these are our peak winds. They're on the bay and the coastal waters. So anywhere from about 35 to upwards of maybe 40 knots. And the winds will be northeast, becoming northwest. The strongest winds will probably be our northwest winds behind the system as the snow moves out and that cold air rushes in. That's our peak wind direction will probably be coming from the northwest. And looking at the timing of it, you can see how the winds, kind of pick up later on this afternoon, starting to pick up from the northeast, especially by, I'd say, about between 6 p.m. and midnight, getting up to about maybe 30, 35 knots, and then really starting to peak out here tomorrow. So the peak wind really occurs tomorrow afternoon, where we start to get up that northwest wind, 30 to 35 knots, continuing in to Friday, northwest here at about 30 to 35 knots. And then by Friday evening, you see those winds decreasing. So the gales are really in effect for targeting later on Thursday and then really through Friday morning. I believe we have the gale warnings expiring about 10 a.m. Friday, which looks pretty good. You see that break there where they're blowing pretty good here at 6 a.m. Still windy, but not gale conditions at noon. So conditions should have improved. And that is all that we have for this briefing. I will go ahead and stop the recording.